Hey everybody, welcome to episode 45 of the Giant Zone. We got a special show for you tonight. Of course, joined by my co-host, Steve the Banker.
Good evening.
And you all know, of course, Chris the Entertainer. Chris, welcome back.
Yeah, I think this is the third time now I've been on your channel. So one out of every 12 episodes or so, whatever the math works out to. Steve the Banker is going to be better than me at that. But one out of every 13 or 14 episodes I get to pop on. So you guys asked me to come on for the playoff episode, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk New York Giants football. And yeah, man, let's jump into it.
And of course, yours truly, Fly Guy Carl. And hello, everybody. We were also supposed to be joined tonight by our good friend Tommy from Tommy Takes, but he's got a little personal issue he's dealing with. So, Tommy, we're thinking about you. Hope all's going well, and we'll have you back soon. Don't worry about it, brother. Given that, so let's regular season ended Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you this personally, I thought it was going to be a lot uglier and worse than it was. Especially the way it started. That first quarter was ugly. But, hats off to the Giants. Look, I'm not a firm believer in moral victories, but you know what? Our subs on both sides of the ball hung tough and competed with that Eagles team all day long. And, that was not an easy game for Eagles fans. They had to be sweating that a little bit there. And, there was some good things that came out of that. If you guys want to just go through it quickly. But Steve, what were your thoughts about Sunday's game?
So first things first, they made it out healthy. And I think we can take a collective sigh of relief. The defense, to your point in particular, was just the part of the team that was so consistent throughout the whole game. They were phenomenal. I mean, let's think about this. They were playing second and third stringers versus Philadelphia's starters, not just starters, but like stars. Yes, Philadelphia had been having some offensive troubles the 2 weeks before. Jalen Hurts hadn't played. He was back. He isn't really fully healthy yet. Who cares? 22 points against that team, that juggernaut, is insane, especially when we know that they were doing everything they could the week of practice to make sure that they get back on track for the playoffs. So, and they win that game so they get the bye. I mean, they were highly motivated, right? So they came out healthy. The defense was phenomenal. We saw one of my biggest takeaways, saw lots of backups who got experience. And what stuck out to me were, I'll just give you a couple names. Fordell Flott, great to see him, one of the rookies. Dane Belton, another rookie. It was good to see him back because he had kind of been, we all know, like, okay, he had a couple nice moments earlier in the season once he was healthy off the injured list, but then they kind of pushed him back to the bench. Wyatt Davis, the guy was just re-signed for the second time. Supposedly has weight issues. He keeps bouncing around the league. Now, he was a high draft pick, so there's a reason teams keep signing him, but it's like, oh, he's probably just going to tuck him away on the practice squad again. He played. He got playing time at guard. I saw him quite a few series. So then Jared Davis, who they just resigned, to me, already like the best middle linebacker on the team. So
probably
who knows if he's going to get much playing time in the first round. And Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But starters who needed it got work, O-line especially. Thank God, Andrew Thomas, they rested him, but the guys who needed to play on that O-line played. And we all know the O-line is all about everybody. The more time they play together, the better feel they get as an offensive line. And then lastly, Davis, Webb, and Golladay, the plays that they made towards the end of the game on offense, I thought what was so cool about it was how it seemed to galvanize the team. And, Shane and Dable, we know they're smart. We know it's been an amazing season. We know that there's been moments throughout the season where it's like, we haven't agreed with certain things. But once again, man, these guys, they're just so smart. They knew who to play. They knew who not to play. Players getting injured is part luck. Don't get me wrong. So, knock on wood, we were lucky with that. But to be able to play some guys who ended up being players that starters, we saw on the sidelines how they were all like gathering around them, rooting for them, cheering them on. It's all part of this culture he's building. And we know that's such an overused word. So now going into the playoffs, if hopefully they can continue to ride this, you've taken like Golladay, who clearly could have been a cancer in the locker room. We know there was probably a wide receiver they got rid of this year who was a cancer in all likelihood. I don't know how much of a cancer it is. That's a guy that everyone seemed to be rooting for. It would be so easy. I mean, if the players had an ounce of the fans' frustration, I think it would have. And clearly, that starts at the top. And Shane and Dable are doing something right. Beyond the X's and O's, they're creating a situation where when a Davis Webb got his paycheck, he got his only start in his career, And then what we saw with Galladay and getting that touchdown, I think everyone's like, even the fans are feeling extra special after that game.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see Kenny Galladay catch a touchdown. I mean, it's nice. He paid him $72 million. It was nice to see him catch at least one. But no, it was cool to see. I was happy for him. And in a lot of ways, I think Galladay was fortunate this year in the sense that if this would have been the years of past where we were winning 4 or 5 games, he would have felt the wrath of the fan base, much like Evan Ingram did in previous years, Darius Slayton did last year. But because we were winning, fans kind of like, whatever, we're happy, we're winning football games. So we kind of benefited from that aspect. But listen, man, as far as the game goes, the Giants, to me, it was obviously a perfect Sunday would have been to win the game, and to prevent the Eagles from getting the number 1 seed. But it was damn near close to a perfect situation for the last week in the season because Brian Dable had a big decision going into that game. We talk about moral victories. I agree with you. In the NFL, there's no moral victories. You win or you lose. But we know that there is momentum that can be built off of losses. Nobody knows that better than New York Giants fans. And you go back to 2007 against the Patriots. You go back to 2011 against the Packers in the regular season. Lost by the same score. I was at that game late in the year, 38-35. Later beat the Packers in the playoffs. I felt a similar vibe in this game. Even though it was the backups, this is a game that instills confidence going into the playoffs. I think a fear for a lot of people going into this game was by benching the starters. It's going to deflate the upward trend, the upward trajectory that this team has had the previous 3 weeks. Because I think even though our record may not indicate over the last 4 weeks, we've been playing our best football. You got the Washington game. We go on the road. They had an extra week to prepare. When I say that, I speak of Washington. They had the bye. They had played us last. Every advantage in the world was for them. We won that game. That was a very impressive win that we were able to win in a must-win circumstance in that situation. Then we play our best offensive game of the year, probably, against the Minnesota Vikings in a game we absolutely should have won, and we played them at their own game. We threw the ball 42 times, which I didn't think was in our best interest going into that football game. Daniel Jones balled out. We lost the turnover battle by 2, and we still should have won the game. Then we destroy the Colts 38-10. We win by 28 points. I don't care if we were playing my high school football team. If you would have told me we were going to win a game by 28 points all year, I would have called you crazy. And then with the third-string quarterback and all the backups going up against the number 1 seed in the NFC, and I don't care if Jalen Hurts looks skittish, nobody's going to convince me that the Philadelphia Eagles going into this game were not trying to win this game as much as they possibly could. They were playing a banged-up Jalen Hurts. If you got to be at least somewhat concerned that he could get hurt, why you would just bench him if you didn't care a lot about winning that football game and getting the number 1 seed. They wanted to rush the New York Giants off the field, rest their starters in the fourth quarter. The Giants did not allow them to do that. And I think this is something that could springboard some more momentum and hope going into the playoffs. And I understand the starters didn't play in the game, but if anything, I think it instills more confidence in the coaching staff. Like, if you're a player on the team, if you're Saquon Barkley, if you're Daniel Jones, you say to yourself, oh, yeah, we've got the staff. These guys just went out there with the second and third stringers, and we went toe-to-toe with the number 1 seed in the NFC when they were playing as hard as they possibly could on the road. And we were this close to beating them. And you think about the game. We had the fake field goal. We gave away 3 points there. We had the onside kick where we gave them great field position. Like, we could have easily won that game with third stringers. And I think that instills a lot of confidence in this football team. And you talk about Cordell Flott. Cordell Flott, to me, not now. He's got to put on some weight. He's got to put on some muscle. He's got to add 15, 20 pounds of muscle. Cordell Flott's going to be a starter for this football team. Cordell Flott, to me, has got the intangibles. He's got the height. He's got the arm length. He's got the speed. He's got to add the muscle. But I was impressed with Cordell Flott. He looked really good in that football game. He was the guy outside, as far as everybody goes, offensively and defensively in that game. He's the guy that stood out the most to me in that game. And I'm really excited to see how he develops into the future for this football team. But it was great. It was a perfect scenario. You didn't have to risk any injuries with the starters. You still built momentum. And it just feels like we're playing our best football going into the playoffs. How could you not be excited right now if you're a Giants fan?
So, to your point, yes, I think they gained confidence in this game. I honestly do. Coming out of this game, they definitely came out of this confident. But you know what? Here's what I like about this coaching staff. They went into this game confident.
Yeah.
All right. They've been playing good football. Steve, we've been saying all year long, this team just believes. Right? They don't get too down. They don't get too up. They're just really focused on the mission here. And that's what I admire this coaching staff for what they've done. I also think, quite honestly, that maybe the Eagles were kind of looking past them a little bit. Even though the Eagles needed this game, they had to win this game. You know, we all knew, and the Eagles did too, that the Giants were going to be resting starters coming in. They got off to that early lead. It looked like it was going to be easy. The fake field goal disaster, which I don't know what that was all about, in the first quarter. So maybe, you know, Philadelphia was kind of looking past them a little bit. I think the Giants got their attention during the game, and they made them have to play. So I think there's both of those going into that come into play here. You know, just again, some things. You know, all right, Cordell Flott's going to be a starter, yes. So is Dane Belton.
I like Dane Belton.
Yeah, our secondary is all of a sudden looking very well set up for the future. And then you know what? They're going to add somebody. They're going to add another piece in next year's draft too. They have to.
Oh, 100% they're going to. Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
And you know, Jared Davis had a great game, 10 tackles. Let's not forget, next year we get Beavers back. All right, you know, that's injury, maybe 2 years, but we get him back. So, you know, that injury occurred in the preseason, so he's had a little extra time to work his way back from that. So I'm curious about that, but you know, all in all, and they smacked around Jalen Hurts a little bit. And again, you know, we're not talking all starters here. So, you know, in as much as I'm confident in what we have coming up this week, and I think this is going to be a dogfight Sunday. This game against the Vikings. I think that they've been looking at this game since they lost the game Christmas Eve.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and also I quite honestly, I don't think Philadelphia is as unbeatable as we thought earlier in the season. They've gotten a little skittish all of a sudden. This NFC is wide open. The team that scares me the most, as we discussed, is San Francisco.
Yes.
If they continue to stay hot, they are loaded both sides of the ball. But I will say that I don't think the Giants are going to be looked at as a team that anybody is going to take lightly in these playoffs. Like, oh, all right, we play the Giants, we should win that game. You know, especially with what the coaching staff has done, with who our coaches are. I don't think everybody's going to be looking at the Giants saying, you know, I can see people looking at the Giants saying, oh man, I'm glad we didn't get them first round. I honestly, am I being biased because I'm a Giant fan? Maybe, sure. But I've been saying all along, we get into the playoffs, nobody's going to want to play us. So
listen, I think we're playing our best ball right now, and I think the Eagles are playing their worst ball.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be playing your worst ball going into the playoffs. So they're a better team than us. You'd be blind. You'd be stupid not to say otherwise in terms of talent, in terms of the way that they played overall this year.
Right.
But the playoffs is about where you're trending going in. What's your confidence level? The Giants' confidence level has to be at an all-time high. Sure. And the Eagles have to start to be doubting themselves a little bit. They have not looked near as good as they did over the first half of the season. I agree with you. The 49ers, I think, are the class of the conference, but you never know. They got a rookie quarterback with Purdy. So you don't know. And that's why you play the games, and it's open. You know, there's no powerhouse in our conference. The power is in the AFC. It's not in our conference. Giants got a shot no matter who they play.
Absolutely. And, you know, the Eagles get lucky that they got that bye. They have got to be counting their blessings that they have a bye this week. Counting their blessings.
Of course.
Let's that's enough with the Eagles. So now we've got our playoff game. First time since 2016, our first right? 2016. Yep. So here we go, guys. Chris, I'll start with you on this one. What are you looking at, or what are you looking towards, or what are you going to be watching this Sunday?
In terms of all right, defensively, I think where we have the advantage is the defensive line. Like that's our bread and butter. And this team is starting to, not that we're near as talented, but it's starting to give me those 07 vibes in terms of the way that the team is constructed. The defense is built around the pass rush. We've seen this pass rush get better and better and better over the course of the year. Dexter Lawrence has been phenomenal. Kayvon Thibodeau's only gotten better over the course of the year. We hopefully have a really healthy Azeez Ojulari, who's looked great this year when he's been in 5.5 sacks, I think, in 6 games. And we all know Leonard Williams is a monster. So I think that's where our strength is in this game. I think that's where we could take advantage of Minnesota, because Minnesota's got their third string center. They got that backup right tackle, and they don't have a very good offensive line to begin with. Right. So if we're going to win this game, that's where I think we're going to win it. I think we're going to be able to create turnovers against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, what I think the Vikings are going to do to try to combat that, because they're not stupid, they know that that's our strength. They know that that's their weakness, and we all know they got tons of weapons all over the football field. But what I think they're going to try to do to combat that, I think they're going to run the ball more than they did the first time around when they played us, because we all know we're not great in terms of guarding the run, especially off the edge. So expect them to try to use Dalvin Cook. And I think they're going to use a lot of wide receiver screens. They're going to try to get the ball out fast. They're going to try to feature TJ Hockenson in the passing game as well, because he torched us the first time around. I think we'll double Justin Jefferson for the majority of the game. I don't think Wink is going to blitz a ton. I think he's going to rely on those four guys I just talked about to get pressure on the quarterback, and I think they will more often than not. I think our defensive line is going to win us this football game, but you can't make light of their weapons. They have one of the better receiving cores in football, whether it be Jefferson, Thielen, Hockenson, Osborne. They've got weapons all over the football field. So it is definitely going to be a tough test. This is a team that we know with the Minnesota Vikings. They're not a powerhouse, but they're a team that's battle tested. I think they're 12-0 in games that are of one possession, one way or the other. That's how they're 13-4, whatever they are, despite the fact that they have, I think, an even plus minus, because the games that they've lost, they've gotten blown out. They lost 40-7 to the Cowboys. They got blown out against the Buffalo Bills. But we should have beat them the first time around. I think our team's better this time around. We've played better down the stretch. We got Adoree Jackson back. We got McKinney back. We have a healthy pass rush this time around. So I think we match up well on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, how could you be scared of this defense? I mean, the Minnesota Vikings defense is trash. Let's be honest with ourselves. They're ranked dead last. I think they're like 32 or 31 in points for and yards and points against, rather, and yards against. We were able to move the ball all over them. I think Jones threw for like 350 yards the first time around. The one thing I'd like to see in this game, as opposed to the last game, I thought we got away from the run a little too much the first time around. I thought we got a little too pass happy. Now, they kind of used Barkley in the pass game as an extension of the ground game. He had 8 catches. They used him out in the flat. But I'd like to see them try to use the ground game a little bit more of a balanced offense. But at the same time, I want to see Jones try to take the top off that defense, because I know he can. Minnesota's defense is not very good. You got to take what they give you. But I think we're going to win. And I think if we win, it's going to come down to that defensive line. I think that's going to be what wins us this football game if we win it. And the thing that really worries me, not just in this game, but throughout the playoffs, if we win this game, our special teams are bad, and that's the type of thing that could ruin a football game. We know Richie James fumbled 2 punts, and every game it just seems like we're an inch away from letting up a kick return for a touchdown. Like, that has to be tighter in the playoffs. Like, we can't give up those hidden yardage. I'm really worried about that going into the playoffs.
Steve, have you heard? I know Dalvin Cook got hurt Sunday against Chicago, and he didn't come back. Have you heard anything?
I think he did come back, if I'm not mistaken. I think he did come back.
He did not.
He didn't? Okay, I was wrong on that then. Okay.
Yeah. But
I have some updates on their offensive line, but I didn't know that about Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick look on that now that you're saying that, because I'm curious, but go ahead.
So go ahead, Steve. What do you think about their offensive line?
Well, so let me take a step back. So you guys know how I love statistics, et cetera, et cetera. So I did my research and I looked at both teams. Chris, you touched upon it, offense and defense, and I looked at rankings. And sometimes I think we use the full season's rankings to a fault, because we all know how the early part of the season, it's so different. Teams are kind of trying to see what works, filling each other out. We also know players get hurt for stretches, so that affects the performance on defense or offense. We also know teams trade for guys. So you mentioned TJ Hockenson. Oh my God, one of the best receiving tight ends in all of football. Clearly, he's finally found his footing in that offense, and that is the thing that always kills the Giants. So when I say I looked at the end of season full year rankings on each team, we take it with a grain of salt, but at the end of the day, you are what you are as well. And I think I just wanted to pull out 2 or 3 things that were fascinating to me that I didn't know before I did this. And then I'm going to give you real quick where I think each team has their advantage. And I think where we're going to end up is where we start, which is there's a reason the game was so close last time, because unfortunately, these teams are actually really evenly matched. I don't think it's easy to say the Giants are just going to definitely beat them.
Oh, definitely not. It's going to be a close
I agree
game.
with you.
Yeah.
We could win, but it's interesting how I get there. So I looked at all 4 categories for both teams, both sides of the ball. Points scored, rushing, offense and defense, passing offense, passing defense, yards given up, yards, and total yards. 2 things that stuck out for me on offense. Minnesota is number 28 in rushing. blew me away. They have, in my opinion, one of the 5 best running backs in football. Dalvin Cook ran for almost 1,200 yards again. And they usually have some pretty good backups. I know they had problems with their offensive line and health this year, but it's still a good offensive line, at least for
It's
run
funny
block.
you say that because I was going to mention.
Shocking.
I thought the first time we played the Vikings, actually, I think I said it. They did and Washington did the same thing against us. If you recall the Washington game, Brian Robinson was running all over us.
Yes.
They only ran the ball with Brian Robinson 4 times in the second half.
Right.
And I thought Minnesota did the same thing. They were able to run the ball on us, and they got too pass happy in that game against us. I'm worried about their run, regardless of what their run rankings are, because we know our run defense isn't very good. But that's funny you say that they're ranked 28th, and that's something you would not expect. And probably has something to do with the coaching, because I thought they did a really bad job in that game when they played us. I thought they got away from the run much earlier than they should have.
The difference is, though, Minnesota's got a better passing offense than Washington.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve. Please finish.
So obviously their passing game is phenomenal. Number 8 in points, number 6 in yards passing per game, number 7 in yards in the NFL. Okay, fine. Their offense, big picture though, is still excellent. We know this. Giants offense, number 16 in points. I got this from ESPN's final statistics, so the site could be slightly off compared to depending on which site you look at, but this is what I found. Number 16 in points. We said at the beginning of the season, Carl, if the Giants are somewhere in the middle on offense, this is a playoff team.
Yes.
Number 4 in rushing, I was surprised. Not because Saquon didn't have a good year. He was number 1 in the NFL in the early go, and we know he had and we know Daniel ran a lot, but I thought maybe they tailed off a little bit. I think we all wouldn't have been surprised. Saquon had a couple games with only 30 yards, 40 yards. Daniel, we still ended up number 4. Number 26 in passing, I think, is the key stat. We're all aware of how horrible the passing offense is, but it's not one of the 2 or 3 worst. It's number 26. And obviously the end of the season performance has helped that. But I thought that was impressive. And then number 18 in yards. So what do I pull out of that? The thing that was shocking to me is how close they are in red zone offense. And this segues perfectly to what I was going to say about the defenses. Our red zone offense, we know we're top 10. We ended up number 7, 63.2. What does that tell you? We don't have any flash players. We don't have anybody that gets chunk plays between the 20s. Darn it, once they get to the red zone, man, Kafka and Dable know what they're doing. Okay. Minnesota's number 8, guys. 62.5. So also dynamic once they get to the so evenly matched, right?
Yeah,
evenly matched. Defense, you said it, Chris. Number 31, number 30, number 31 for Minnesota in yards given up, points scored against them, passing yards per game. Okay, fine. Giants, obviously a better defense. Number 25 in yards, number 18 in points, kind of middle of the pack. And we know this, right? Lots of injuries, lots of holes in the worst linebacking core in football, basically. Some major holes in the secondary once you get through the starters. We didn't have much depth. And once you get through our defense, we traded away our best backup, Gettleman traded away to Cincinnati, who's having a career year again. We don't have much going on behind Leo and Dex, and we know that, right? But our defense with Wink held together. Our red zone defense compared to Minnesota, we're number 5 in the NFL. 49.21%. Minnesota's number 21. So the key here is evenly matched on offense in the red zone. But once each team gets in the red zone, the Giants have consistently, except for a little bit of a swoop there in the second half of the season where we were having some issues on defense in the red zone area. For the most part, our defense is solid. And we know that, right? As fans, if we've been watching, we know our Wink's thing is we're going to get to the red zone, but we're only going to give up the field goal most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. You can score on this Minnesota defense. And it's not just about getting from the 20 to the 20. It's once you get in that red zone. So here's where I think each team matches up. I'll make it quick. Kicking game, edge, ironically, goes to the Giants. Number 9 in the NFL in field goal percentage. Minnesota's number 27. I know it's painful because we saw them pick a field goal in overtime.
I mean, we're in good shape there.
But it's interesting because you wouldn't have known that. If I had said to Giants fans, for the most part, Minnesota's kicking, oh yeah, they're great. That's how they beat us. They're only number 27. Now, a lot goes into that. Maybe they go for longer kicks than we do. You know what? They kick in a dome, guys. Number 27. We're number 9. Minnesota gets home field advantage. They have a good home field. I think the Giants have a coaching edge. We have a great young offensive coach. But top to bottom, I think the Giants, I think everybody would agree. We have Giants, I just talked about red zone defense. We have the edge in red zone defense. I think it's even with red zone offense. In fact, we're ranked one above them. I wouldn't have said that before I did this. Ball control, I think the edge goes to the Giants. If they try to play the ball control game, or we try to play the ball control game, and why am I doing that? Guys, it's the playoffs. That's how you often win.
Keep your
Especially if
defense
you're playing
fresh,
against
yeah.
a dynamic offense. We saw that back in 1990-91 for the Giants. Keep the ball away from the K-gun and the Bills. That's the way you keep the ball away from a dynamic offense, is control the clock, run it. It's not easy to do. I give the edge to the Giants with their run game and Kafka's play calling. Lastly, the trenches, you touched upon that. I think the advantage, the Giants are getting healthy. Enough said. You gave great discourse on that. All the right people are coming back at the right time, and all the right people rested this week. Minnesota, and here's where I'll end it. Minnesota is having major issues on that offensive line. They were having issues going into that last game we played them. And guess what? That's important to note because it hasn't rectified itself. Their replacement at right tackle, Ole Ude, is actually the backup to the backup. Brian O'Neill, and maybe their second stringer, Brandel, may be coming back, but probably not, because even if he comes back, everything I read today, it's probably too soon. They'd be rushing him. So you got the third guy playing offensive tackle. In all likelihood, you have your third stringer playing center. Their starter, so Garrett Bradbury he practiced. It looked like he just finally came back and practiced today. In all likelihood, he's still not going to play. They're saying it would be really, really hard for him to play. Their backup center is done for the year. So if Garrett Bradbury does not play at center, and that the reason I'm focusing on that is we all know the center of our defensive line.
Dexter Lawrence.
Right.
Yeah, baby. I mean, Leo, come on. So you got Chris Reed at center, who's your third stringer, not just backup. He's your third stringer. So I think it's an even matchup, but I think where it really matters, you hit the nail on the head. The Giants have significant advantages, even though there's some things against them. Going on the road, going against maybe the best wide receiver in all of football. It's debatable, but probably.
Yeah.
Going against still a very dynamic tight end. We all know no matter how great Wink is, it gives you problems. But I think there's enough advantages there. There's no reason the Giants shouldn't win. The last game they played against them gave it confidence.
Yes.
I think the only thing that's the wild card, Chris, and you nailed it, is the special teams. I posted on Twitter this week. Everybody saw it. Everybody loves T-Mac. By all accounts, he's such a nice man. He's a good guy. He's been a good coach. He's been a coach for the Giants for a long time. He left, he came back. We love that in the Giants organization. In the offseason, I want to see. So I'm not trying to change the subject.
Yeah.
We need a new special teams coach, and that's all I'll say about that. So it makes me nervous. I think you hit the nail on the head. Special teams are the wild card. But all else being equal, there's no reason we shouldn't win this game.
I just want to touch on a couple more things based off of what you said. Another thing I worry about that I should have mentioned, Evan Neal worries me a bit. They got a couple of good pass rushers on their side. Evan Neal did not look good against the Philadelphia Eagles. We've seen him get wrecked week to week. So if you ask me something I really worry about on this offense this week, it's probably that. I think Minnesota is going to try to take advantage of that. To speak off of some of the stats that you said, I just want to go a little bit further into detail with interesting stats that I found. You talked about the red zone offense. I looked at Daniel Jones's individual red zone statistics this year, and I was amazed when I looked at him. Daniel Jones last year, I was amazed at how bad he was in the red zone when I looked at him last year. 38% completion percentage last year in the red zone. 38%. And I understand the red zone is harder to throw. So that's why generally I don't really look at completion percentage because I think it's kind of a flawed stat because each scheme is different. You're going to have a lot of checkdowns in certain schemes, so your completion percentage will be higher. But once you get inside the 20, I think it's more relevant because it's harder. It's a more condensed field. He had a 38% completion percentage last year in the red zone. This year, 64%. He has the third highest completion percentage inside the red zone this year in the NFL. Another really interesting stat. You mentioned like the time of possession and how that could play to our advantage. And a lot of times it's hard to judge why you are strong in the time of possession because it could just be as easily defensive influenced as offensive influence because if the defense is getting a lot of 3 and outs, it could draw up your time of possession because you're keeping the opposing offense off the field. So I took a look at what our average drive length is. The New York Giants this year are averaging 2 minutes and 55 seconds a drive. And you may hear that and you might say that's not that high. It's high. It's the 6th highest total in the NFL. It's the highest total that we've possessed the ball per average on drive since 2008.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that is huge, and that's a big reason why this offense has been as improved as it has been.
So, a couple things I want to touch on here. I mean, you guys kind of hit on everything important here. I think getting pressure on Kirk Cousins this week is going to be so important because if he's got time, and with that receiving corps, with Jefferson, Thielen,
Hockenson, yeah.
he'll eat us up. They will eat us up. And, don't forget, Dalvin Cook can also catch the ball coming out of the backfield too, which you need to be also very careful of. So getting and again, I agree with what you guys are saying. This is why I don't see Wink going blitz crazy this weekend either. You can't afford to do it it's effective if you get to the quarterback. Early in the season, we were all saying, all right, it's great that Wink is trying to blitz, but we're not getting there. And against a team like Minnesota, that's going to come back and haunt us. So I think we need to be real careful there, and I think he will. On offense, they need to pound the ball this week. If Saquon can run the ball effectively, all right, and he doesn't have to break off 25, 30-yard runs, every time, every set of downs. But if he's effectively picking up yardage and you're getting your first downs, you're eating clock, you're keeping that Minnesota offense off the field. Again, those are the two biggest things that I'm looking forward to. And as I say that, and we're talking about the Minnesota offensive line being banged up, this is this matchup this week is almost the perfect matchup for us right now. Just given the state of health. The Minnesota coach, Kevin O'Connell, has come out and said he thinks Dalvin Cook is going to be fine. That could be coach talk, coach speak. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to show your hand. But there is an injury there. So is he going to be 100%? Big unknown. But again, it makes us hopeful as Giant fans that something good is going to come out of this. It just feels like it's lining up very well for us. We're catching them at the right time for us, the right time for them. And you know what? We've got a confident team. Daniel Jones has probably never been as confident as he is now. And isn't it funny?
Good point.
I think there's a stat that was similar between Eli Manning and Daniel Jones, or a similarity. I think Eli Manning played 4 postseason games before he won his first, and Daniel Jones has waited 4 years before playing his first game. So it's something that I may be wrong on Eli, but there's some connection there. But I'll tell you, I'm super confident. I don't expect Daniel Jones to revert back to the old Daniel Jones that we've been seeing for the past couple of years. I don't. Our wide receivers. Okay, I'm still not expecting a lot out of Kenny Golladay. I'm not.
I don't think he's going to play much.
I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah.
So
he might be a decoy, and we have
Yes.
to be fair to him.
yes,
And believe me, it pains me to
Yes.
say anything good because the guy's just been such a disappointment. But he's been a pretty good run blocker. Now in the past he hasn't. We've seen him, Carl. That's been like one of the big things you've always said. Man, this guy doesn't even put the effort in.
Right.
This season,
Oh, he's been good in terms of blocking.
We've seen him throw some good blocks, guys.
yeah.
But I still think Slayton, Hodgins, and James are your main three receivers going into the playoffs. But maybe you use Golladay in the red zone. I mean, that's what he could bring to this team, right? A 50-50 like he did in that game. And another guy that impressed me, I don't know if they're going to use him in the playoffs or not because he's a liability in terms of blocking. Cager looked good to me. Cager looked good to me. It looks like he's a guy that can make plays for an offense that needs guys that can make plays. So maybe he's a guy that in certain areas of the field that you could utilize him in the passing game a bit too.
If we win this game, guys, who do they play next?
More than likely the Eagles. The only way we wouldn't play the Eagles is the Seahawks would have to beat the 49ers, which I don't think is going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And San Francisco's beaten them twice this year already. They swept them in the season series. So I don't even want to look ahead to that point. I want to play this game Sunday. I'm expecting a good game. So I expect them to come out like they did against Washington, like they did against Indianapolis, like they did against Philadelphia. All right. Even though it was our subs, they were confident. I mean, but the Washington game, they came out, that team was ready to chew glass. And right, you could just see they had their ears pinned back. It's like they took the field knowing they were going to win that game. It was such a good feeling to see that again out of a Giants team. When was the last time we said that we saw that we even felt that? So,
well, Carl, that's why I thought it was so important. Chris touched upon this when we beat the Colts the way we beat them. I know this is like it's sacrilege to talk about Coughlin, right? Oh, Coughlin was. Listen, there were many times that Eli pissed me off. There were many times that Coughlin pissed. There were many times in those years, if we're being honest with ourselves as Giants fans, we were incredibly. And one of the things that used to frustrate us, for being honest, come on, guys, be honest out there, is how often did the Giants play down to their competition? It was only maybe in that 2-year stretch, those magical years with Plaxico, where they were just blowing people out. Carl, to your point, like they beat them and they beat the crap out of them. How often do we see that, man?
Right.
Not often.
Are we peaking at the right time? And this season has been one big roller coaster. If you think about it, we came out hot, then we flattened out, then all of a sudden, they turned it on again.
And the other thing I'll say about this team, you talk about the roller coaster of the season. At the beginning of the year, yes, we were winning.
Yeah.
We were off to a great start, 6-1. But I always felt with this team, especially over the first half, even over the first 12 games of the season, I always felt like we needed to play a perfect game, regardless of who we played, in order to win. Mistake-free football. I don't feel that way anymore. And I'm not saying we could get away with as many mistakes as Josh Allen makes with the Buffalo Bills or Pat Mahomes makes with the Kansas City Chiefs. But I feel like this team could make a mistake or two and still find ways to win some of these to win a game against a team like the Minnesota Vikings. That's how I know they've advanced.
Yeah.
Because I no longer feel like if they make one mistake, I could be like, all right, I still think we could win this game. Where the first 12 games of the year, I did not feel that way.
One word, and I'll let Carl take it from here. Chris, that's coaching.
Yeah.
Coaching.
Yeah. Agreed. And again, how many times have I said that? We have seen teams under these last 3 coaching staffs, they just folded. They gave up. There was no confidence, right? There was no confidence. There was no fight. The minute they got down, we knew the game was over. And you're not seeing that this year in this team. This team is resilient. It goes back to week 1 with Wink going for the 2-point conversion to beat Tennessee. So, think about all of that. So, to your point, Steve, coaching, Dable set the tone early with this team. It's all about relationships for him. It's all about, these players will go to war for him. And again, how many times have I said on our show, Steve, I love after a win that these players are coming up to this coach and they're high-fiving with him and they're hugging him. When was the last time we saw that?
Guys, I still want to know what the hell Dable was saying to Galladay after he scored. You saw that he put his arm around him, he put him down the bench. Maybe you didn't want to know, what the hell is he saying? I was dying to know what he was saying to him.
Yeah, Jihad Ward too. I think had his arm around him too, right before Dable came
over. What I liked about the whole Galladay thing, it's come out afterwards. Everybody, to a fault, said how happy they were to see him get a touchdown. He's worked so hard. He's been such a good soldier. He hasn't been a cancer. He hasn't complained. And when he was interviewed after the game, he said, look, it is what it is. I'm glad I got my shot. So, you know what? He's earned a little bit of my respect back because just the way he's carried himself here.
Yeah, he's handled himself like a professional.
Exactly. Whereas, can any of us say Kadarius Toney would have done that?
No.
That's
why Kadarius Toney is no longer a Giant.
3rd and a 6th, man. I still can't believe I was so happy. A 3rd and a 6th. But I promised I won't talk about the draft. So the 3rd and a 6th, it's crazy.
So given all this, how do you guys feel about the future of this team? Like the current state of the Giants? And Steve, I'll start with you on this one. How do you feel about where this team is right now?
It's funny. I was actually going to ask you, and then I told myself, stop interrupting. I don't want to interrupt you and Chris. I was going to say to you guys, and then the other thing is I didn't want to interrupt because I was like, don't look ahead. I don't want to jinx it. If the Giants win, don't even think about it. Don't talk about it. But I thought about that because to your question, I thought, my gosh, my God, this is a rebuild. And it is. It's still a rebuild, but they're winning. And not only are they winning, they made the playoffs. And look, the offseason is going to tell a lot. Re-signing Daniel. Can they re-sign Saquon? We know both sides want it to happen. 9, but potentially as many as 11 picks in next year's draft. I think what we're seeing is a front office that understands what they're, and I said this in the very beginning of the offseason when we first started this show. The thing that I loved about Shane and what I said we were going to see with these two guys, having worked together, not just in Buffalo, but in Miami as well, is they're going to be in sync. A mutual symbiotic understanding of who you want. That's who you want. Okay, great. That's who I'm going to find. These two guys understand the players that they want that are going to fit in the system. And it's not always going to be the flashy guy in the draft. And sometimes it's not going to work out either. And sometimes the players are going to get hurt, but we have to trust. And I think they've earned that from us already in a very short period of time, that they understand how to draft. They understand the right free agents to find, undrafted and otherwise, practice squad and just regular free agents. That the salary cap is sacrosanct, that you don't mortgage the future. I know the Rams won a Super Bowl and whatever. For the most part, there's a proper way to build a team and a proper way to let those players go on after a first or second contract. And that's what a healthy salary cap looks like. And you keep replenishing through the draft. So we have the right front office and we have the right coaching staff. Listen, I hope we win Sunday. I think we're going to win. But regardless of how it plays out, I'm having been a Giant fan for so many years, Carl, since the early 80s, and I know you can say even longer, and we've been through so much as Giants fans. Those moments of joy, we've only had one Super Bowl where we lost, and it was 2000, and we try not to even think about it. But beyond that, the Super Bowls that our team has won, there was only one that was a blowout. For the most part, it was such a journey for us as fans with the team to get there, and it was never overnight. It was often a surprise, but the reward was so amazing when we didn't give up as fans and we followed them on that journey. So I feel like to answer your question, we're at the start of this journey. And I think no matter how it ends, let's not give up. Let's keep going. If they win again. Once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Right.
But I think it's the start of something special is ultimately what I'm trying to say. I really do.
Chris?
Yeah. I mean, as far as I feel, listen, whatever happens in the playoffs. I'm going to go with the mindset of why not us? If I saw us go and beat the 18-0 New England Patriots, if I saw us go and beat, and that was a better team. Like, let's be real. Like that team had a really good developed pass rush, really good weapons. Both of those teams that won Super Bowls, a more advanced quarterback. Like, no denying it, they were better than this team. But you never know. That's why they play the games, and that's why we're excited as fans going into the playoffs. But I'm thinking big picture at the end of the day. Right now, I'm not thinking big picture. I'm thinking about the here and now because it's the playoffs. Yeah. But when the season is over, regardless of what happens, I'm going to look back on this season. I'm going to say this is one of the funnest seasons, the most enjoyable seasons I've ever gotten to experience as a fan because of how unpredictable it was, the beginning of what I feel is going to be something great. Two guys that I believe in, that being Joe Shane, that being Brian Dable, and a quarterback that I'm starting to believe in with what now he's been provided with, and he still hasn't been provided with a whole lot. I think he's starting to grow more and more into what we hope could be a franchise quarterback. And this team, to me, in terms of a 5-year outlook, is about as bright as you could hope for as a fan. This is the beginning. This team still has so many holes. We have the worst linebacking core in football. We have the worst wide receiving core in football. We might have the worst interior offensive line in football. And without a Dory Jackson, we may have the worst cornerback duo in football. Yet this team is in the playoffs because we have a coaching staff that knows how to get the most out of whatever he is provided with. That is what he has demonstrated this year. That is what Daniel Jones has demonstrated to me this year. And I'm super happy, man. I'm super happy with the direction of this team. And I do have faith that we're building something for sustained success, which as a Giants fan is not really something I could ever say since I've been watching this team. You had the Kerry Collins era. I started watching probably 97-ish, 96-ish. Yeah, I had the Kerry Collins era for about 2-3 years where they were good. Then they had a break there. You get Eli. Eli, they were good. They were good from about 05 to 11. when they won their Super Bowl, they were good. They had about a 6-year stretch. But outside of that, I mean, it has been up and down since I've been watching this team. And I feel like we're going to get another 6-7 year window where we're going to have an opportunity to compete for the playoffs year in and year out. That's where I think this is trending. And as a fan, how could you not be ecstatic with that? Because this is only going to get better.
Sure. For the past, 6 years, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we entered the season or the off season hopeful that they were going to finally turn it around and get it right. The difference now, and again, look, we're in the playoffs. I want to win it all. I don't want to win one game and then we're done. I don't want to be one and done. I want to win it all. I want a Super Bowl here. All right. Will I be disappointed? Sure, I will. But the difference now is instead of entering the next offseason hopeful that they get it right, I'm now confident that they're going to continue building it. And it like you said, Chris, you started watching the Giants a little later than I did. All right. I go back to the 80s. Hell, I was in the 70s. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that. I'm not going to.
That's what I was waiting for.
Throw out any numbers there, guys. But, I remember those 70s teams. But, early 80s and through the early 90s, there was that 10, 12, maybe 13-year period where we expected to be good every year. We expected to be one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league every year. And I think with this coaching staff and this GM, we've got a chance to get there again. I think this is the first step. I think this is a great first step. I think it's exceeded most fans' expectations. I feel real good about where we're going. I'll be disappointed if we lose Sunday or if we lose somewhere in the playoffs, but the recovery from that disappointment will be much quicker than coming out of a real bad season where it just looks like there's no hope in sight. So I think we're set up. And again, it started with the offseason. We won the offseason with the hiring of Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. I mean, hands down. I don't know if Daboll is going to get Coach of the Year. I think
he should.
I don't disagree. He should. I want him to.
Ridiculous.
But there's that guy down in Jacksonville that did a really good job there too, and he's going to get some competition from that. So I hope he gets it. I don't believe all these people that say Nick Sirianni should get it. I don't. That was a playoff team last year. I don't want to hear it. I disagree.
Yeah.
We were a 4-win team last year, so I don't want to hear it.
We were a dumpster fire.
Correct.
And it's not just our wins. It's not just our wins this year. Like in terms of our record, like I could have convinced myself before the year started we were going to win 8 games when I looked at our schedule, but I would have said we're going to beat Seattle. I thought they were going to be like a 3-win team going in. We have a good chance to beat Detroit. I thought they'd be like a 4 or 5. And our schedule in a lot of ways turned out to be harder than I thought. There was no way in hell I thought we were going to beat the Baltimore Ravens. There was no way in hell I thought we were going to beat the Tennessee Titans week 1 on the road, a team that's far advanced, a team that's a perennial playoff team. They were number 1 seed in the AFC the year before. So it's not just the record for me with Daboll. It's some of the wins that he had. The Packers game in London,
yes.
The Washington game, playing Minnesota down to the wire. So I think he's the coach of the year. And you factor in all the injuries this team has had.
Yes.
For him to overcome that and get this team to where they've been.
And what was it?
Oh,
there was a wreck. Sorry, Chris, but there was another stat just to back up what you're saying. There was, I forget when it was. It was maybe one of our last shows actually where you were on. I'd done the research at the time, and the Giants led the NFL in most players on their roster who were not on the roster at the beginning of September because they were guys that they had to then go and sign off. So San Francisco's had a ton of injuries, but they have a phenomenal roster that's been built over the course of time. So their second and third stringers just step right up. The Giants don't have that luxury. They've had to go and sign players from practice squads, free agents who are just floating out there that nobody wanted. They led the NFL in that. Yeah. So to be able to get those guys and then to fit them in and to get them up to speed, like Landon Collins is a perfect example, to leverage them, to get them to to not be a cancer in the locker room, to get them to learn the playbook, to then I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know?
I listen, there's a lot of deserving candidates. You mentioned Doug Peterson. He's done a great job with Jacksonville. They've gotten hot over the second half of the season. Dan Campbell did a really good job with Detroit. Yes. They started out 1-6. They finished 9-8. He was tremendous. Did a great job. You look around, even Shanahan, right? I mean, the 49ers are on their third string quarterback. They're 12 and with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft. I think they won like 13 games, the 49ers.
Pete Carroll. Seattle.
Pete Carroll with Seattle. There's a lot of guys that deserve recognition. There's been a lot of really good coaches this year. But the best, as far as I'm concerned, is Brian Daboll. To me, he deserves it, and I hope he wins it.
All right, guys, real quick. Predictions for Sunday. Go ahead, Steve.
Come on. You coming to me first? I didn't know you were coming at me with that. Chris, you want to go first? You're the guest of honor.
Yeah, I'll go first.
I'm punting.
I think it's going to be exactly what you expect, in my opinion. It's two teams that play really close games. Almost every one of the Giants wins has been really close. Every one of the Vikings games has been very close. So I think it's going to be a game within 3 or 4 points either way. I've seen Giants fans say we're going to blow them out. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to blow them out. Minnesota's still got a really potent offense. I do think we have advantages in a lot of areas in this game, though. And if we play our game, we play fundamentally sound, I think we're going to win this football game. I think it's going to be a game played in the mid-20s because I do think they could put up points on us. But I also think we could put up points on them. Their defense is not very good. So I'm going to go 27-23 Giants. Giants win by 4.
24-21 Giants. Steve?
29-24. The Giants get a safety. They get a 29er on the board.
All right, I'll take that. I don't know. However, they go in 2-0. I don't care. But
yeah, exactly right. I'll take that and be happy.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Look, this was really great. Chris, always great to catch up with you. We really appreciate the time tonight. We love your insight. And who knows? They keep winning the playoffs. We're going to have you back.
Can't wait. Hopefully we get
back
the win.
For the Super Bowl preview. How's that?
That'd be if we make the Super Bowl, you bet your ass I'll be here. I promise you I'll be here for a Super Bowl show.
I got that on tape, baby. I got that on tape.
All right, guys. Thanks. Chris, thank you again. Steve, is always great.